Nick from the Ultimatum season 3 is abusive, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. Now, I already called this last week, but these new batch of episodes definitely confirmed it for me. In one of my last reactions, I had a lot of people trivializing and romanticizing Nick's behavior and quite frankly downplaying his behavior. But I feel like with these new batch of episodes, it's very clear to see that Nick, at the very least, is unstable. Now, in the next batch of episodes, we learned that after Nick's crash out and when he went to apologize to JR and Sandy, this was not, oh my God, he just lost the plot and, he crashed out, but he apologized and, now he's going to behave normally, right? No, he continued harassing Sandy. And not only did he harass Sandy, but he harassed Sandy's friends and family members when he couldn't get through to Sandy because Sandy blocked him. And to me, that's just very scary behavior. Very, very scary behavior. And it was the fact that at the changeover, he was trying to act like this was the one and done manic episode for me, knowing damn well that he continued harassing Sandy and JR after. And one thing I had to side eye about that is how Caleb and Scotty were basically trying to be like, well, he handled the situation as best as he could and that JR and Sandy need to basically get off his back because he apologized. Meanwhile, they both don't know that he continued his harassment campaign against Sandy after apologizing for the first one. And this is why it's dangerous to downplay and romanticize and trivialize abusive behaviors. Now, Scotty defending Nick, I wasn't surprised about Scotty, but Caleb, side eye. But anyway, moving forward, in the second batch of episodes, Nick actually admits that this isn't his first time doing crazy shit like this, and alludes to the fact that he basically did this to his ex. So this seems to be a pattern with Nick. Another thing to note is that Sandy basically says that Nick's pattern is that, he romanticized her, everything was good in the beginning of the relationship, and then he basically went cold, wasn't showing her any attention, wasn't attending to her. So she was basically like, well, I'm leaving now because, you clearly don't want me if you're treating me this way. And then when Nick realized that there was a possibility of him losing Sandy, suddenly the love bombing started. And that seems to be Nick's strategy. He love bombs, gets you hooked, then he goes cold, and then when you react to him acting cold by leaving, he then starts the love bombing again to reel you back in. And Nick himself admitted that he has done this. He literally admitted that this is his method, which of course is a major red flag. And I think this also adds context to the state of their relationship. Everybody's saying Sandy don't want him, Sandy wants to leave him. Personally, I feel like this is very clearly a sprinkle age gap relationship where both parties are aware of their roles. Sandy is the attractive baddie, the trophy girlfriend, and Nick is the older guy who provides for his trophy girlfriend. But it has become increasingly clear that Sandy is ready to check out of this relationship. And it's only a matter of time until she does. So Nick is desperate to try and manipulate and entrap her into this relationship. Now, the concept of this show is wild. It is deeply unserious. But if Nick is serious about Sandy, why would he bring her on such a show? Nick and Sandy are absolutely aware of how this show works. They were fully informed signing up to this show. But if Nick is supposedly in love with Sandy so much, why would he bring her on such a show where essentially he's bringing her to a free-for-all with other men? Personally, I think Nick underestimated his competition. And I think Nick thought that he was taking a calculated risk. Because generally, looks-wise, the men are not necessarily ugly on the show. But most of them range within the kind of average to, good looking range. But I would say for the most part, none of the men are wildly good looking, wildly muscly, wildly buff. Generally, it's your normal, average, everyday man, something that Nick can compete with in the real world. He was not expecting a JR to turn up and be in this experiment, let alone couple up with Sandy. Now, Vanessa is a gorgeous girl, the one that Nick coupled up with. But, if we're in a face card competition, JR and Sandy are definitely winning. And like I said in my other videos, I also highly suspect that Nick's insecurity stems from the fact that JR is this big black guy coming to steal his white woman. Now, Jay and Sandy insist that all they did was kiss, they did not get physically intimate, but Nick was just insisting and probably running himself crazy, thinking about all of like the pornographic fantasies in his head about Sandy and JR getting physical with each other. But anyway, back to my point, he didn't anticipate there being major competition there. So I feel like he thought it was going to be fair game for him to secure a good looking woman, and Sandy was probably going to be with some average man, and you know, Sandy was going to be jealous of him and this other woman, and she was going to be sick and jealous and begging for him. That's how he hoped secretly it was going to go. But unfortunately for him, it was in a reverse, and his plan backfired and he reaped what he sowed. Hence the crash out. I also highly suspect that Nick pitched this to Sandy, basically saying, yes, this is going to be a test for our relationship, it's going to be good for our relationship, but also us going on this reality TV show is going to be good exposure for us. You know, you're good looking, you could easily become an influencer of this show, and this show is going to be great for, you know, my art, that's going to, you know, be good exposure for my art business. I definitely think he probably put that marketing in there as well, and Sandy was probably like, Instagram followers, okay. Because, you know, when I checked Sandy's social before, she had about like 2,000, 3,000 followers, so it's not like she was an influencer coming onto this show, but she definitely looks the part. So I feel like Nick probably put some sort of incentive there of them going on a Netflix reality TV show to get her to come on the show as well. But ultimately, he was probably thinking they're going to get engaged after this, or at the very least stay together. He didn't think that this was going to ruin their relationship. But as I said, that all backfired. What's also interesting is that Sandy says that she's never seen this side to Nick before, that he's never been possessive over her. He's never been the manic stalker, the manic harasser, which to me is like another red flag, because it just shows like an escalation of more and more and more abusive behavior. So I feel like Sandy definitely needs to get out of there, because you're in danger, girl. And she can definitely feel it too, like the way that she was telling JR, the way that she was crying to JR, basically saying she did not want to be back with that man, she did not want to live with that man. And even in the beginning, when they were living together again, it just kind of seemed like she was a captive. Like when she was hugging him and kissing him, it just seems like she was being held captive. Another thing to let me know that Sandy is checking out is the whole argument when Sandy basically didn't disclose that her and JR had another kiss to Nick, and Nick basically got upset again, and he's basically like, when were you going to tell me about it? And she was basically like, after filming. And he was like, after filming, after we got engaged. So Nick's delusional ass is thinking that they're getting engaged. But the reason why Sandy is saying after filming is because she has no intentions of getting engaged to this man, and it's flying over Nick's head. Like, Nick, that was your sign there that she has no intentions of marrying you. I think another powerful scene is after that whole argument, Nick comes with the love bombing. I love you, I love you, I love you. And she's basically saying like, you can't remedy everything with I love you. There has to be respect there. And that she feels like he doesn't have respect for her. And I absolutely agree. I do not feel like Nick is in love with Sandy. I think he loves the idea of her, but he treats her like this object, this thing that he can possess. I think the fact that Sandy is this LA party girl and he's trying to make her this traditional wife in the countryside, take her away from, you know, what she knows, already lets me know that he just sees her as this object that he can just place wherever he wants. And I feel like a lot of older men seek out younger women to do this. So that's pretty much a roundup on my thoughts on Nick. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are. Have your thoughts on Nick changed from the last batch of episodes? Have they remained the same? Do you think Nick is abusive? Yes or no? Let me know what you think.